Nicola Sturgeon, was it unwise to play the independence card so early in the campaign? Did you have to retreat from it?
I don't think I would describe it as playing a card. It's an issue of principle that, given the implications of Brexit, we don't know yet exactly what they are. I hope I'm wrong, but I think the approach to Brexit that the Prime Minister is taking, a very extreme form of Brexit, could be really, really damaging to our economy, our society, to almost every aspect of life. So my position is that at the end of that process, not now, but at the end of that process, Scotland must have a choice, once we know what the implications of Brexit are, to decide, is that right for the country, or do we want to take a different path?
But in this moment in which the election has been called, independence really has to, step back, because you're talking about a situation in which so much could happen to the Scottish economy even before you ever had another referendum.
Which is why I am not proposing a referendum now. My proposition is at the end. But
that's not how it sounded at the beginning. It sounded almost as if a vote this time will confirm that I need an early referendum.
I've always said at the end of the Brexit process, I think we should have that choice.
You do 4 times more trade with England than you do with the whole of Europe. So what happens on Brexit is a massive implication for you.
I don't think we should lose the ability to trade with the biggest single market in the world, which is 8 times the size of the UK market. And the Prime Minister and the government just now is at pains, and rightly so, let me say, to say to the Republic of Ireland that Brexit doesn't mean Ireland having to choose between trade with the UK and trade with the EU, and at pains to say there will be no hard borders between the north and the south. So if that's true for Ireland, then it doesn't make any logical sense to say to Scotland that somehow, if Scotland was to have a different relationship with Europe, that we wouldn't be able to trade with the UK.
If the polls, not necessarily believable, but if they really do suggest a tightening, possibly even a minority Tory government, you might be called upon to prop it up. Now, what would the price be?
Well, I'm not in the business of propping up Tory governments in any sense. If the arithmetic after the election allowed this to happen, I would want the SNP to be part of a progressive alternative to a Tory government, an alternative that invested in public services rather than cut them, that protected pensions rather than undermine them.
Well, you've only got one other option, and that would be Labour. Would that be progressive enough for you?
Let me come on to that in a second. Even with the narrowing of the polls, I think it looks as if the Tories will win this election on the strength of what happens across the rest of the UK. But what is not inevitable anymore, in my judgment, is that Theresa May increases her majority. Remember, she called this election because she thought she could steamroller everybody aside, crush the opposition, and then she's showed herself to be the weakest and most evasive leader in living memory. But Scotland has the potential to keep a Tory government in check and make sure that Theresa May doesn't have a majority that is boosted on the strength of Scottish votes.
The big problem that you have is that you have 10 years in power at the Scottish Parliament, running Scotland so far as you have the devolved
I don't think
powers.
that's a problem, incidentally.
Well, except that take education, for example, the record is really very poor indeed. I mean, a loss of 4,000 teachers, a ranking on the international scale that is lower than Scotland has ever seen. That's not good, is it?
We have challenges in education, but we also have
What are the challenges?
Well, let me come on to that in a second, but I also think it's important not to allow the Scottish education system to be trashed by people who want to talk down the SNP government.
But it used to be so much better than England. Much better.
We now have more young people coming out of school with good qualifications than ever before. We're seeing the gap between the richest and the poorest young people start to narrow. We've got more to do that. We have record numbers of Scottish young people now going into university, record numbers going into positive destinations, whether that's further education or training or work, than ever before.
I'm looking at graphs here in the FT that show student performance in maths are literally going from a very high level and crossing over with England going up and you going down. And the same true in performances in science. Terrible figures.
I'm not denying we've got challenges. That's why I was about to tell you the various initiatives we're taking to address those challenges. I think in government...
But in part you're going to be elected on the basis of your record.
This is the point here. I think it is absolutely right to hold the Scottish Government to account. But Thursday we'll see MPs elected that will go to the House of Commons to vote on public spending, whether the money we have available to us to invest in schools and hospitals goes up or down, to vote on issues like welfare, the decisions that will determine whether or not 1 million more children across the UK are plunged into poverty, something that will make it harder for any government in the UK to raise educational attainment. So these are the issues people are voting on. And the choice for Scotland, we know the Tories want to have further cuts. Do we want MPs that will support that, or do we want MPs that will argue for an alternative to that?
Nicola Sturgeon, thank you very much
Thank
indeed
you.
for talking.